In this video today, I'm going to speak about some common job interview questions that you may face in sports nutrition. The first question could be, well, what are the nutritional requirements for, what is your understanding of football, rugby, basketball, whatever the sport is at the interview? And this could be harder than it sounds. To give an example, you could have spent 2 or 3 years working swimming, then you go for a job in cricket with no prior experience. Well, the panel's going to test you out. What do you know? You don't want to be too specific in your answer. You have to think about context. So there's the pre-season, there's in-season, there's off-season, there's all sorts of different time periods and all sorts of different contexts to consider when you answer a very broad question like this. And it's also worth mentioning that you need to get some sort of experience, and I would vary this experience across different sports and different activities. Even if you're a massive football fan, don't just stick to football. Think about all the different sports, all the different activities you could get involved in. Secondly, a question fairly similar, but how would you vary your nutritional advice to players across different positions? So let's say you're working in football, rugby. Each position, each individual will have slightly different needs. If I show you these, for example, you've got 3 different players: centre half, attacking midfielder, and defensive midfielder. Their nutritional requirements could vary. So what's your experience of this? You need experience, you need that first-hand knowledge from your placements and your shadowing. But for these sort of questions, you want to back it up with science as well. So the strategy that you took on, well, where did that come from? So that's why you need to spend a lot of time on Google Scholar, reading books, podcasts, whatever it may be, to learn as much as you can about the science. The next question, now I've said this across different careers, but it's quite common: non-compliant athletes. Because not every single athlete is going to eat well. How do you deal with that? And there are some examples of this in reality, such as Andrew Ruiz. So he won the first fight against Joshua, came to the rematch, and he admitted not long afterwards his preparation wasn't great. So these are situations you may face in your career in sports nutrition. So how did you identify this, and what did you do to intervene as well? So you need to get that experience of working with athletes over a long period of time, monitoring them, and how can you intervene to help them. So I'd get that experience because it will be really key in an interview. You'll get asked about how to deal with this. What's your experience of that? If you're just given everything from a textbook and a journal article and your modules at uni, it's not enough. A panel is much more interested in what you've actually done away from class. The next question is related to your seminars. How do you make your seminars engaging? Because as a sports nutritionist, you may have to deliver information to groups of people, groups of players, athletes, and not everyone's going to be interested in what you have to say. So you need to work on your presentation skills. How can you become comfortable with the uncomfortable of having to deal with a lot of people in a room, having to try and engage them? And there are different ways you can do this. There's the quality of the presentation you put together. How do you make it engaging via the use of animations and transitions, keep their attention? What about your tone of voice? What's your presentation style? How do you include people in the conversation as well? Are you just speaking to the room uninterrupted for 20 minutes, or are you getting people involved? And with that experience, you need to do self-reflection. There are certain errors you can pick up on which are really clear. You'll look back and think that presentation could have been so much better. But get feedback from the people as well. And that's tough in the early stage of your career. It can dent your confidence if someone tells you you're not very good at something, but these are words you need to hear in order to develop. My next question is, well, tell us about a time an athlete was making limited progress. How did you react to this? Because in reality, as a sports nutritionist, it doesn't always go to plan. I've given you the example already of Andy Ruiz. And how do you actually monitor the progress of an athlete? Firstly, I'm going to say you need to think about your own ability as a sports nutritionist. So in your placements, what are you doing? What are you doing well? And are there certain areas which you're not doing very well? So in order to improve your understanding as a sports nutritionist, if you're a student now watching this, you need to go away, look at books, journals, videos, podcasts, blogs, wherever it is, learn about monitoring the progress of an athlete. And then with that knowledge, well, what did you do? How did you support the athlete and what happened afterwards? Again, you need this situational stuff in an interview. If it's all just, well, I read a book of what someone else did, yeah, it shows you've got awareness, but it's not your experience. You need to get your own experience, talk about the highs and lows of being a sports nutritionist, what you did well, what didn't go well, more importantly, how you reacted when it didn't go well. So to finish off, the question, if you're a student right now, you're thinking, well, what do I do? What do I need to do as a student to maximize my chance of working with the best? And that's how you should look at it as a sports nutritionist. Aim high, the likes of Anthony Joshua, or working at Manchester United, or the biggest teams, the biggest athletes you can work with. You've got to learn the science, really, really important. So that's your base. It's the books, it's the journal articles, the podcasts. It's the amount of time you're willing to put in to learn about that. You need to shadow. It's really, really important. There is certain red tape on what you can and can't do as a nutritionist, as an undergraduate student, but there's nothing stopping you from going out, shadowing, communicating with qualified nutritionists, and just learning the steps and the processes. This one's really important to finish off as well. Face your weaknesses head on. Maybe take notes, pros and cons, or strengths and weaknesses. What are you really good at? But more importantly, what do you need to improve to become more rounded as a nutritionist? Okay, so that was my video on job interview questions in sports nutrition. If you want to discuss this further, if you want to learn more about different questions that may come up, let me know. And you've got the usual platforms there at Sports Science Hacks on Instagram and at TJ Thompson 90 on Twitter. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.